seems that I always tend to start these updates off with a good news and bad news kind of deal, and I do apologize for doing that a lot. However, in this case, I don't actually have any good news to tell you guys. How is that, you might be asking yourself? Let me explain what's been going on these past couple of weeks. Now, before anybody starts to panic, no, the show isn't being cancelled or anything. However, there may be a bit of a delay regarding episodes in the near future. Thus, the series might be delayed a little bit longer than was originally planned. Recently, things hadn't been going well for the Reboot series. For one, there have been some budget problems for the animation team, and because of this, we may or may not have to change the animation from 3D to possibly 2D Flash animation. Now, this isn't a 100% absolute fact, but from what I've been told by some of the writing staff and a few animators, it might be happening unless we get a bigger and better budget. Secondly, because of these recent budget problems, we've been having to deal with issues with the voice actors regarding payments and pay cuts. And as you might have expected, this caused some really heated moments with most of the original voice actors. Now, don't get me wrong, they absolutely love the show and its concept, and they really do have a lot of fun reliving their past experiences with the Backyardigans. However, despite loving the show, they do have their own responsibilities back at home, and if they weren't given a proper paycheck, they would have to quit the series altogether. Thankfully, we managed to come up with a small solution to their problem by bumping up their checks a bit. However, this didn't seem to really pacify one of the voice actors, Chris Grant Jr. After about a week after the small pay rise, Chris told the Nick executives that he was going to try and find work elsewhere, and with that, he put up his 2-week notice. From what I was told by Janice Burgess, money wasn't the only reason why he was going to quit the show. He was going to quit because while he did enjoy the show, he felt that he was just too old to continue with it, and he knew that eventually he really wouldn't be able to do any of the voices for Tyrone without damaging his voice. This, of course, was a huge problem for the staff and executives of the new series. Many of the staff members tried to persuade him to stay with the show and help out. Heck, even Janice herself tried talking with them, but he was firm in his decision to leave. However, he did have at least one thing that he was willing to do before he left the series for good. He was willing to voice in one final episode. Once all that was done, the writers and other staff had at least two options to consider. Option 1, continue with the episode Be My Valentine, and not explain the reason why Tyrone is missing in the later episodes. Or Option 2, make a new episode all about Tyrone and give a proper explanation as to why he's gone and will probably never be on the show again. Of course, as you may have expected, we chose the latter one. So once a decision was made, we spent some time writing the script, editing, and animating the episode. Once it was done, everything was completely ready, with of course one thing: the processing and buffering for syndication. As I said in the last post, I'm not going to describe what I did when I got home because you guys already know what's going to be done during that time. So I placed the USB into my computer and readied myself for yet another episode of the Backyardigans Backyard Adventures. The episode started up like normally, with the new intro and everything and so forth. Once it ended, the title card came up. It showed all the Backyardigans with the exception of Tyrone waving goodbye to a car that's driving off into the sunset. Their faces are all filled with sadness, with all the characters shedding tears as well. The text above them read, in yellow font, the 13th birthday. After that, the episode began with Pablo, Austin, Uniqua, and Tasha all setting up birthday decorations next to Tyrone's house, with their parents helping them as well. Pablo is sitting on his father's shoulders, tying a banner saying happy birthday to a tree. Tasha is placing cups and plates on a picnic table that is often used in the show. Austin is carrying a bag of charcoal with his dad to a large grill. Uniqua is carrying a large array of chips and snacks with her mom, while her dad brings in a large bag filled with sodas. Well, I guess that's all out of the way. Thank you for your help, Pablo. Pablo's father, a large blue and white penguin dressed in similar line of clothing that Pablo wore in the show, says as he wipes off his sweat with his hand. You're welcome, Dad, Pablo says as he hops off his father's shoulders. Tasha, sweetie, I need your help with the deviled eggs. Tasha's mother, a large yellow hippo with short blonde hair and similar orange dress and shoes, yells out to Tasha from the kitchen window from Tasha's house. Okay, Mom, I'll be there in a little bit, Tasha yells back. Tasha then rushes over towards Austin and places the leftover paper cups and plates into his hands. "Could you finish setting this table up for me? I need to go help my mom out," Tasha asks. "Sure thing, Tasha," Austin says. "Thanks." Tasha says she runs over towards the house and into the back door. Austin then proceeds to set up the rest of the plates and cups, and then the scene pans over towards Uniqua and her mom, who looks very similar to Uniqua in shape and form. However, she has a lack of antenna and is wearing a blue dress. Setting the soda, chips, and other condiments down on another picnic table similar, however much larger than the original one in the show. Once that's finished, Uniqua's mother then calls for the others, with the exception of Tasha, that is. "Okay, kids, thank you so much for helping us out with the decorations and everything. We got the rest of everything, so you kids can go out and play until Tyrone and his family comes home from the store." The Backyardigans all say okay before walking off screen together, towards what I assume was their little playground. Once they're all out of shot, Uniqua's mother walks over towards Pablo's father and they begin a conversation. "So, Jared, how are things going? Haven't seen you in a while." "I'm doing fine, Janet. It's nice to see Pablo again after the divorce," Jared said as he grabbed one of the sodas on the large picnic table and opened it up. "Still having problem with that case?" Janet asked. "Yeah, but things are getting better for me. I'm just glad that Pablo and I actually get to spend some time together, even if it is just on weekends," Jared says as he takes a swig from the soda. "Yeah, it's not easy, is it? Anyway, have you said anything to Pablo about, Janet asked, motioning over towards the children sitting on the playset. "Yeah, he didn't take it very well at first. In fact, he's still upset about it, but not as much as the week before." "And Uniqua?" "Surprisingly enough, I didn't really get much of a reaction from her. I mean, don't get me wrong, she was upset about it, but not as much as I would have expected," Janet said, scratching her head. "Yeah, it wasn't easy for Austin either," Austin's father said as he walked over towards the pair. "He's been really depressed about it since I told him last week. Heck, he didn't even come out of his room for the entire weekend," Austin's father said. As they continue to talk, the scene pans over towards Pablo, Austin, and Uniqua all sitting down on top of the playground area near the slide. "So, you guys got the bad news too?" Pablo said sadly. "Yeah," the two of them said in unison. "It sucks that he's moving," Pablo said. "Yeah, I mean, why now? Why on his 13th birthday? It doesn't make any sense," Austin said, agitated. "Well, I don't know, you guys. Maybe his dad and mom got a better job at the next town, and they just have to move to get closer to the job," Uniqua says. "I just don't see why they don't stay here and drive to their new job. I mean, come on, how far could it really be?" Austin said with anger in his voice. "Well, it's not like he's moving to a different state or anything, you guys," Uniqua begins. "He's still going to be at our school and hang out with us." "Yeah, maybe during lunch and recess," Austin said, this time a lot angrier. "Soon he'll be going to high school, and what then? We're probably not going to ever see him again. He'll probably find himself some new friends or whatever." Pablo was going to say something at this point, however, he just kept his mouth shut and lowered his head in sadness. "Look, guys," Uniqua said as she placed one hand on each of the boys' shoulders. "I know this is hard, but we need to try and put on a smile for Tyrone. It is his birthday, after all." Pablo and Austin both look at each other for a moment, before sighing and admitting that Uniqua was right. After that, the parents then run over to where the others were at, and told them that Tyrone had came back from the store. After that, they all hide, rather poorly I might add, near the picnic tables. The scene then cuts to the inside of Tyrone's house, with Tyrone blindfolded and his parents guiding him towards the back door. They're all completely quiet until they make their way out of the house and into the backyard. Almost instantly, Tyrone's parents remove the blindfold and all the parents and kids pop out of their hiding spots yelling, "Surprise!" Tyrone jumps about a few feet in the air in surprise at the sudden yell. After a few seconds, he finally lands back down on the ground and says, "Don't do that." They all laugh before starting up the party. Now the party scene goes on for far too long than it should have been, so I'll just skip that part and head over towards the quote-unquote meat of the story. Besides, the party itself wasn't really anything that interesting, just typical party stuff that you and I would do at home. However, the only thing that was different in the scene was that was the plastered-on smiles on the other characters. specifically the Backyardigans, minus Tyrone. Once the party had finished, all the party decorations and the food were put away, and the scene then cut to the backyard at night, with all the houses illuminating small segments of the yard with their lights. It then showed Pablo in his PJs walking out of his house with a sleeping bag tucked under his left flipper, and his mother patting him on the head saying, "You have a good time at the sleepover, sweetie." "Thanks, Mom. I love you," Pablo says, hugging his mother. "I love you too, sweetie. If you need anything, just come over and I'll get it for you," she said, returning the hug. Pablo then waves goodbye to his mother and then steps out of the yard and starts slowly walking over towards the house. As he does this, he looks over towards Tyrone's house, and his smile drops down to a frown instantly. After a few seconds of walking, Pablo stops in his tracks and starts walking over towards the picnic table. Upon reaching said table, he throws his sleeping bag on top of it, sits down, sighs, and places his head on the tabletop. He then lifts his head and stares at the screen with one of the most saddening faces plastered on him. He then says to the viewer, "This isn't easy for me at all." A few seconds pass before he speaks again. "Tyrone's been my best friend since we were little. In fact, he was the first friend I ever had." The scene then fades to a dreamlike sequence of Pablo and Tyrone in a playpen. The both of them were respectively wearing blue and orange onesies, with green and blue pacifiers on their mouths. The two of them were babbling cutely, like babies tend to do, until Pablo's blue pacifier falls out of his mouth and lands on the playpen floor, just out of his reach. This causes Pablo to start crying, until a few seconds later a green pacifier is placed gently in his mouth. This causes Pablo to stop crying, and he looks over towards Tyrone, who simply smiles and gives his friend a cute side hug. Then another dreamlike sequence comes up. This time it shows Pablo and Tyrone as young preschool kids, around 3 and 4 respectively, in a preschool class of some sort, finger painting. It wasn't shown what they were finger painting, however it does show some blue paint getting flung accidentally onto Tyrone's face, to which Pablo starts to laugh. Halfway into the laugh, Pablo gets splattered with orange paint. They both proceeded to have a little paint fight with each other. This ends with the two of them covered in so much paint that they both look like each other, color-wise that is. Then it showed a large slurry of multiple clips from the original show, The Backyardigans, with Pablo and Tyrone playing around and going on adventures with the others. The flashback then finally comes to an end, with everything being engulfed with a pure white light, before cutting back to Pablo sitting at the picnic table, with a much sadder look engraved on his face, then a few tears flowing down his face as he sniffles once and lays his head down on the table. Then out of the blue, an echoey voice of Uniqua plays, which causes Pablo's head to jerk up immediately. "We need to try and put on a smile for Tyrone, you guys." Pablo sniffles once again, before wiping his tears away from his face. "Unique was right," Pablo began. "I need to stop being so upset about this and just be happy for Tyrone. It's still his birthday, and I'm not gonna ruin it for him." Pablo wipes his face once more, and then shakes his head comedically before slapping on a smile, quite literally, before grabbing his sleeping bag and making his way towards Tyrone's back door. He knocks on it a few times before Tyrone's mother opens it and says, "Oh, hello, Pablo, dear. Come in." "Thank you," Pablo says. Pablo walks inside of the house, and immediately notices the practically barren interior of the house. The walls were empty, save for the small squares of dust that showed the original resting places for pictures and trinkets. The kitchen area, however, still seemed untouched, as it still had some of the kitchen decorations and appliances as well. The living room area was also barren of any kind of luxury or necessity that was normally put into most houses. This, despite Pablo's happy expression, seemed to tear him up on the inside. "The others are upstairs, Pablo, if you want to join them. There are also snacks there as well, so if you get hungry, there are plenty there for you to eat. If you need anything, I'll be outside on the front porch reading a book. Okay, dearie?" Tyrone's mother said, smiling. "Sure thing, and thank you for letting us have this sleepover," Pablo said, thanking Tyrone's mother. "Oh, it's no trouble at all. I'm quite sure Tyrone would love to spend some time with you guys before the move tomorrow." Pablo put on another fake smile before slowly walking up the stairs. As he continues to walk, Pablo's smile starts to deflate into the same frown that was seen earlier in the episode. He then gets to the hallway and stops, and stares in the empty hallway for a few seconds before he sighs and makes his way towards the door of Tyrone's room. He then opens the door quietly to reveal the other four characters inside of the room, playing around with some small toys and games. Pablo then walks in, to which Tyrone says, "Hey Pablo, come on in." Pablo then walks into the room and goes over towards the others. The others greet him and they sits down on the ground. Tyrone's room is completely empty with nothing else more except a small TV on the floor, a few toys and a couple of board games, and a large air mattress with some bedding on top of it. Pablo then sits down next to the others, and they proceed to play some board games and watch a movie. This goes on for a few minutes before the screen transitions to everyone sitting in different parts of the room, obviously bored. Tyrone looks around at the others and decides to start up a conversation, a much-needed one. "Hey guys," Tyrone said as he hopped off his air mattress. "Yeah?" the others say. "You don't need to keep up the act. I know something's bothering you guys." The others look at Tyrone with a surprised look at first, before smiling, with Pablo saying, "Nothing's bothering us, Tyrone." "I know that's not true. For one, I've been you guys' friends for over 6 years now, so I can read you guys like a hawk. Secondly, you all had fake smiles plastered on your face all day at the party, and I guess I understand that. However, you don't need to do that anymore." Tyrone coughs a bit before continuing. "Now I want you guys to really tell me how you guys feel about everything going on right now. None of you even bothered to talk about the move since I told you guys last week. I'm your friend, and I want to hear you guys out. And don't bottle up your emotions. Let everything out, and I'll listen." The others look at Tyrone for a bit before their faces fell. After some time, Tasha steps up first and begins talking. "Well, I'm not really sure how to take all this. I mean, don't get me wrong. You having to move to another town stinks, but at the same time, I understand that you can't really control this." "Dang, Tasha, you took the words right out of my mouth," Uniqua said, surprised. "Really?" Tasha replied. "Yeah, I feel the same way about this entire thing." "That's not creepy at all, is it?" Uniqua said. "Of course not," Tyrone answered. "Now, Austin, it's your turn." "Want my answer?" he began. "This entire thing sucks. This job that your parents have to go to sucks. This day sucks, and this move sucks." Austin yells as he slumps to the floor, arms crossed and face in a pouty, angry face. "Feel better, Austin?" Tyrone asked. "Yeah, I guess I do," Austin said, somewhat relieved. "Now, Pablo, it's your turn," Tyrone said as he turned his head towards Pablo. Pablo jumped slightly at this, but soon remembered what Tyrone had told him to do. Let it all out. And that's what he was going to do. Tears started to form in Pablo's eyes as he began to rant heavily about how much he hated what was happening, and how it just wasn't fair for him or anybody else that he was moving. In the end, Pablo got really angry and ran out of the room, slamming the door shut on his way out. Now you might be asking yourself why I didn't type down what Pablo said. Well, Pablo was speaking really fast, and I just couldn't really track down each and every exact word that he said. Seriously, I tried doing it 7 times, but even then it wasn't particularly easy or even possible for me to jot down at least 4 words. Once it was all over, Tasha got up from her spot and began advancing towards the door in anger. "Oh, for goodness sake, I'm going to go and pound him in the next week," Tasha said angrily. Just as Tasha was about to open up the door, her hand was immediately grabbed by Tyrone. She looked over to Tyrone, and then he begins to speak. "Tasha, no," Tyrone said, shaking his head no towards Tasha. "Let him cool off for a few minutes, then I'll go talk to him." Tasha nods in agreement, and then the two of them go back to their spots and wait. Then after a brief transition, Tyrone gets up from his spot and makes his way over towards the bedroom door, opens it, and then makes his way outside. Once he walks outside, he looks around the backyard and finds Pablo sitting down on top of the large slide, his head buried in his knees and small sobs coming from him. Tyrone sighs and then starts to climb up the ladder towards the top. Upon arriving, he sits down next to Pablo and asks him, "Hey, Pablo." Pablo looks up at Tyrone, his face wet with tears. "Hi, Tyrone," Pablo said sadly. "Before you even think about apologizing, I don't want you to say anything. I'm not angry at you. In fact, I'm glad that you opened up to me about everything," Tyrone said. "Well, Pablo began. Tyrone then wrapped his arm around Pablo's shoulder. and brought him in for a hug. I want you to know, Pablo, that no matter what happens, I will always be your friend. I'm not going to forget any of you guys at all. I promise you. And don't worry, even with all this, I'll still come over and visit every so often. My parents promised that. I promise that I will never forget about any of you guys at all, and that I'll always be here for you, no matter what. Pablo then wipes his face and smiles. They both give each other a big long bear hug, and then make their way back into the house to enjoy the rest of the sleepover. Then the screen transitions from night to day instantly. Then it cuts to the front yard of Tyrone's house with a small car with suitcases and bags tied down in the roof of the car. Pablo, Uniqua, Austin, and Tasha are all standing next to the driveway, with Tyrone giving each one of them a hug. Well, guys, I guess this is goodbye for now, Tyrone said sadly. The others give a small groan, before smiling a little bit and going in for a large group hug. As the hug was going on, the sound of a car horn blared from the other side of the screen. Tyrone then waves goodbye, rather sadly, for hopping in the car and the car driving off. The scene then shows Tyrone sitting in the back seat of the car. He then gets up from where he's sitting at and looks out in the back of the car and starts to sing the first line of the outro. We've got the whole wide world in our yard to explore. Then it cuts to the others still standing next to the driveway, who also begin to sing as well. Now it's time for us to say goodbye. Meet you next time when we're back. The scene then shows a half and half scream with both Tyrone and the others singing the final line of the intro. With your friends, the Backyardigans. The episode then ends with the car driving away from the house and towards the sun. The credits then play. I'll admit, this was a very depressing episode. Well, I guess not as depressing as Say Uncle, but it was still rather up there. Now, with that being said, you know how I said in the beginning that I didn't have a whole lot of good news? Well, I lied a little bit. I do have some. For one, Tyrone isn't going away completely. He'll still make a few cameo appearances during some episodes of the show, and if provided that we can find ourselves another actor, he might even have a couple of speaking lines. Also, speaking on that matter, if we ever do find ourselves a new voice actor for Tyrone, then this episode will be scrapped entirely, as this hasn't been aired yet, so of course, we do have that option too, provided that we find it. However, seeing as how our money issues are getting in the way of everything, I highly doubt that it'll happen anytime soon. With that being said, I want to say thank you all again for your support for the show. I'll update whenever the next episode is made, and as I've said before, and as I will continue to say until the end of all this, continue to support us. We really need it.
Meet